The noises of rain. Can you hear it?
I cannot.
There you go. But hopefully the internet lasts out because unfortunately, one of our things in our country is whenever it rains, storms, or anything like that, doesn't matter how good your internet is, it can do some pretty crazy things. Where are you at the moment?
I'm in southeast Wisconsin, just a little
Oh,
bit north of Milwaukee, the home of the Harley Davidson.
wow, there you go. And I presume that you may have a Harley Davidson?
Well, I had one at one time. I do not currently own one.
Why? That just
Ah,
let me down for a second there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. I get it. The beard and everything else. I
I
definitely.
know, seriously. My biases jumped straight in right then. So why do you not own one now? You've moved up in the world. You've decided that was so last year, and now a
Yeah,
different
well,
one.
it. Yeah, I'm lucky enough, and my missus definitely likes riding. She doesn't want to
Mm.
drive one, but we just haven't dived back into to purchase one. I sold my bike when I had moved to Philadelphia a number of years ago because I figured not much riding opportunity there, and I just haven't gone back in yet.
There you go. So maybe it's still something for the future, just not a
I
now thing.
I think so. I think so. Most definitely.
I love that. Have never ridden one. Always thought they looked really amazing. So
Oh,
one day,
it's definitely an experience.
yeah.
Yep.
I've been on little motorbikes on the scariest streets in Italy, going very
Huh.
fast around windy things. But other than
Right?
that, pretty new to all the motorbikes and things like that.
Yeah,
But they
that's
look amazing.
there was a when I used to live down in Atlanta, Georgia. There was this
Mm.
amazing ride between where I lived and this place called Helen, and it was just like
Yeah.
those nice, slow, winding roads. A lot of fun to ride.
Wow. Sounds so good. I miss the travel. It's the one thing more than anything with these borders closed. And being in Australia, our borders are so closed that we are really, I mean, on one side, I'm so grateful because we're stuck on an island that is just an amazing island. It's a beautiful country.
Hmm.
On the other side of it, I loved exploring the world and going on new things and just experiencing the new adventures around the next corner, and having never
Right.
been there before. So,
Absolutely.
I look forward to the day I get to do that again. Anyway, welcome to the decision table. We
Well, thank
literally
you.
just have conversations on this table,
I'm good with
and
that.
yeah, I figured that because you have jumped on here. I've never met you before, but I think that one thing that is just so exciting about life right now is we can continue the same way or we can do it a little different and we can
Hmm.
evolve and learn from one another. And I think the best way we can do that is if we're going to be willing to have a different conversation. So I figured one of the ways I can have a different conversation is by meeting new people
Hmm.
on the decision table and just having a conversation. Now, the lens we're using this month, because I always use a lens, I think that it's less about us asking questions and then going, oh, that's what I wanted to hear, and more about using a lens and seeing where the conversation goes. So,
Sure.
uh, the lens this month is what I call humanity as stakeholders at the decision
Mm,
table.
yeah.
What does
It's
that bring
funny.
up when you hear that?
It's funny is that's a perfect lens because I'm gonna jump off from a conversation that my wife and I were just having earlier today, and we were discussing the fall of Rome. And if you
Mm,
think back, Rome being one of the great civilizations that was around,
yeah.
they came up with lots of, what would you call it? I don't want to say politics, but certainly discussions. Lots of great scholars came out of there. The water canals, all kinds of great advancements came out of that. And then they
Yeah.
were wiped out, right? So
Yeah.
great societies across time have fallen prey. And one of the things that she reminded me of during our conversation wasn't that they fell prey to some of the things we may think they fell prey to. They fell prey to a volcano and their
Mm,
food sources being wiped out, right? So if we think about the volcano, the Pompeii got wiped out, right? So it
yeah.
happened on a bigger scale. So here they are, all this great advancements, and they got
Mm,
taken out by nature. And that conversation kind of led into the things that are going on in today's world. We're genetically modifying our food. I'm not sure that's a
Yeah.
great opportunity, right? And the things that can come out of that. I think we, as stakeholders in humanity, as you were calling
Hmm.
it, have a moral imperative to take care of the world that takes care of us, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the big things of that is to stop taking more than we're giving. And that goes
Mm,
in relationships as well as, what we're doing to nature as a whole,
yeah.
right? Hey, I need to take this wood to build my home. Okay, well, that's
Yeah.
cool. How about planting a couple of trees on top of that? Give back kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Do you think we're doing that well as a society right now?
I think that there are parts of society that are doing it well, but I think, and if I'll talk about the United States as a whole,
Of course.
I think there's a huge opportunity for us to be doing a whole lot better, and I'm talking from the top
Mm,
down. I know I go to different parts of the country. I was lucky enough, my dad was in the military, and I got to grow up all over the United States and actually got to go over to Germany for a number of years. And then I joined the
wow.
military and I went back on purpose. I loved it over there.
Mm,
And you see parts of the country that are doing poorly, right? If I think about
yeah.
California and all
Yeah.
the things that they're dumping into the oceans and into the waterways and how they're doing it, not great, right? That is not sustainable for long term. But then you go to other parts like where I'm at now, where you've got farmers doing, old school farming out here, old school dairy. I mean, we literally order our milk from a place in Pennsylvania. They're an Amish farm, and they have a gentleman who's not
Wow.
Amish that helps them, run their website and ship their stuff out. But it's just the
Mm,
most amazing. It's the most amazing product. We're missing that amazing product because we have, just chemically altered it so much.
yeah. So where's this coming from, as in the chemically advancing? Is it because we just have so much that we're worried? Like, what are we doing to do that? I think often we're seeing the result of something and we're
Hmm.
not going back into, well, why did we even go there? Where did someone think that that would be beneficial?
I think it probably started with the almighty dollar, right?
Right.
There's money to be made in farming, but to do that, if we step back to when I was younger in my teens, we're
Mm.
looking at the
So
80s and
last year
stuff.
then, right?
Exactly. Just last
Yeah,
year, I just grew this
of
recently. Anyway,
course.
there was probably, um, I'm going to use the phrase 5 per acre when it came to growing abilities. Now it's like 50, and
Hmm.
I think what they were trying to figure out is how do we best monetize this plot of land when I'm talking
Right.
about farming. And
Yeah.
so they began working with, chemically altering or fertilize. I think fertilizers probably started first. And then someone somewhere in a lab said, oh my God, look at this great idea. I
Yeah.
was able to make this corn produce 10 times. Well, it's also stealing 10 times the nutrients. Oh, that's okay. We can just add fertilizer. So it just began this cycle of,
Mm.
let me yank more out so that I can get the dollars, but we're not going back to I think the better ways of farming. And I know just about this much about farming to be honest with you. The
But
whole
it's
road.
interesting, right? Like
Yeah,
it's an area in which we have, and I think this is the bigger thing, that we just sort of go, well, that's kind of life now. We just don't even think about it. We don't
right.
question it.
Yeah. Of course, I'm lucky enough to be married to an amazingly intelligent woman, which is
Mm.
why she married me. But
Of
anyway,
course, of course.
but one of the things that sparked off in a different conversation was
Mm.
cancer. The
Yeah.
onset of cancer has really blossomed in our lifetimes, right? I know you're
Yeah, so
only
I
18, and I
wonder,
get it.
I am only 18. How did you guess? But here's the thing. No, I don't wish. I actually really don't mind being I'm at closer to 50, by the way. And I'm actually really happy to be at the closer end of 50. I would not want to be an 18-year-old in this world today. I really wouldn't.
Yes.
I love the wisdom that I have from the years that I've gathered, and I'm glad that I had to go through some of the hard things I did, but I don't know that I would want to go through those hard things in the generation that's happening right now and what's happening in society right now.
Yeah.
I really don't. So I'm actually okay being at this other end of it, just for the record. But here's the thing. I think that there's this constant, we accept that this is how we're going to do it. This is what's going to happen. And we just allow others to make decisions
Yes.
based on what they think is a right thing.
Yeah.
And we don't have, I don't know, it's whether we don't have the ability or we don't have the guts, even to question that maybe we don't want to take a part of this particular piece, whether it's to do with, genetically modifying. And to be my personal own thinking around that is I don't want to be a part of that, because I think if we go into the cancer and things like that, there's questions on whether it's increased. I would say it's increased, but then we didn't have technology like we do now that records things in the way that we do now. So how do we know that we just weren't aware of some of these cases? Maybe we were, maybe we were not. And I'm sure there's data backing up either side of that. But I think what question that we should be asking out of that, more to the point, is what are we seeing that adds to maybe causes to things like cancer or whatever else. I'm reading a book right now at the moment. Actually, I read about 5 at once, to be honest.
Nice.
But one of the books that I'm reading at the moment is called Spark, and it teaches around a lot of the power of movement, the physical exercise, and how it changes our brain and the capacity to what we can do with our brain, and the research around that, and how that has actually, in cases like cancer, has removed where they thought there was no cure. And the only thing this particular guy decided he was going to do different was run. And he just started running. He couldn't run very far at first, and then he ran a little bit more, and then he ran more, and then it became his lifestyle, until when he kept going back, because the only way you look at this particular cancer was to go back and just see where it's all at. Like that was all they would do, and they would see it go back. And what was interesting about it was he eventually went back, and of course there was no cancer left in his system. Now, many would say that was a fluke, it was a miracle, whatever, but he's further, of course, since then done many, many different cases of research around how running, movement, physical is changing literally the structure of our brain, which is then, not producing the toxins that are what they are saying can cause things like cancer. Now, if we don't question that and we just go, well, scientists know that this isn't true because we haven't got the data for it. Or is it that we're not collecting the data that we would need to be able to know that this is a truth? And I wonder this, I guess the long story of that is, I wonder if this is where in society we don't question things, we just assume because we don't have any other data to back it up, but that's the truth that we've known so far. Any thoughts around that?
There are two things. I'm going to start off with thing one, then I want to come back to that questioning piece. So the gentleman in Spark, when he starts walking to build up to his running, I would imagine that over the course of his time, moving from walking to walking faster to running a little bit to running long distances, that his dietary habits changed with it, right? Because you don't maintain a good running regimen and eat junk food, right? I mean, I eat junk food, but I also eat, less processed food. So you know, there's a balance there, and you know, so I think there's layers, right? There obviously there's things happening when you do
Always,
move.
always.
Yeah, when you're moving and doing things. I mean, when I get up in the morning, you know, I get up, you know, I drink a little water, and I head straight
Yep.
to the treadmill, right? Get the juices flowing, get the day
Hmm.
rocking and rolling, you know. So I'm a big fan of that, and I know the impact it has on me for my alertness. So there's a brain factor there.
Yeah.
But if I know that if I turn around and eat, you know, something heavy, you know, right after I get off the treadmill, or, you know, just a lot of fat content or whatever, you know, then that will pull me back down. So there's a dietary aspect. So like I said, there's layers. But to come back
And
to
there's
your
always layers, right?
right, and there's the thing. So
Yeah.
that that loops back into your
Mm.
question about do we just accept or do we question it? I think a lot of times we just accept, and that's a problem.
Mm.
I think, and I can't speak for obviously where you're at, but I know scholastically coming up,
Mm.
they spend a lot of time teaching you how, you know, memorize, right? Here's the
Mm.
stuff you need
Hmm.
to know, and then now go do a job, and then you have a boss
Yeah.
that tells you what to do, and you know there's always someone to tell you what to do. Well, so they're teaching you to be, I call it a lemming, right? A follower. And then
Mm.
there's the few folks that are out there that break free of that. Maybe they start their own business, they
Mm.
build their own company, you know, whatever it is, they tend to keep questioning. They seek. They look for new information, you know, and they're, hey, don't get me wrong. I know there's a number of people that work in corporate America who have
Yeah.
bosses, but
Yeah.
they say, oh, wait a minute, I don't totally agree with you, right? And they go and they do a little bit of research and they find out that, okay, well, it's not just about running, right? It's about
Yeah.
food, and it's about this, and it's about that. And, you know, he was breathing good air, or, you know, what, all the little layers on top of that that kind of round everything out. Do I think food by itself causes cancer? Well, no, I don't think that. Do I think there's a factor inside of that? Absolutely. Do I think, you know, sometimes some of the big companies that are out there that are making a lot of money
Yeah.
off food, off chemicals, off this, off sugars, off booze, whatever, are in a self-preservation mode? Oh yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. They're
Yeah.
in business, and they have a responsibility to their shareholders. And
Yeah.
sometimes they will take that precedence of their shareholders over the safety of those that may
Yeah.
consume or use their product. I just, you know, that's just my personal opinion. Are they? Is
No, I
everyone out
think
there
you're
like?
bringing up. I think you're bringing up a really interesting, insight around that, and I think that we have to question whether that is the truth in many situations, in some situations, in all situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that. I can vouch that it's not all situations. I've met amazing people, and I'm a massive advocate of growing your growth of your income, your economy,
Mm-hmm.
because I believe that we can do a lot around what we do with that. Now, here's the thing. I think that every time we are at the decision table, if we're building because we just want to get more money to entertain our stakeholders, which are our shareholders,
Mm-hmm.
then that is a whole different issue. That's not what I'm talking about. But if
Right.
I know that if we are able to absolutely increase and accelerate our economy resources, like the
Yeah.
economic resources that we have, so that we can go to and look at the lenses of humanity as stakeholders at the table, and know that what we're able to do and access and be able to
Yes.
help out on, then that's a whole different story. And I think that this is where I always go back to humanity as stakeholders, because I think when it is shareholders as stakeholders, then
Mm-hmm.
things like greed can come into play.
Absolutely.
Things like, we are just building around what we think we need. And who are those shareholders? Who are those people? Now, those shareholders may go from the lens of humanity as stakeholders, and that would be a different story.
Sure.
But I think we miss those pieces. We talk about variables. Well, this is a variable to the situation. And I think until we start using lenses like this, we are
Mm-hmm.
going to have more and more of these problems where we are seeing that it's built out of something that a small pocket of people think is important for
Yes.
everyone else. And
Absolutely.
I
I
think that
absolutely.
that becomes a scary situation, because then, because it's important to that particular pocket, it becomes, then if they're allowed, if they're able to get it out, if they're able to, make a noise with it, then that becomes what our norm is. And I think that that's the bigger issue,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
is, what are we allowing as our norms,
Mm-hmm.
because that is just what society is telling us. And I think if we can question those things, that some of these other things we get
Yeah.
stuck in complaining, making a big issue about something that, yes, is an issue, don't get me wrong, but I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a bigger issue that we're not even questioning some of these other things, and then bringing the solutions to the table.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to, if we stay with the humanity as stakeholders, that
Mm,
comes back to so many of us, and I mean the unanimous us, to look
mm-hmm.
beyond ourselves and our own
Yeah,
families, right? So yeah,
yeah.
obviously I want to take care of me, I want to take care of those I love, but then I got to think outside of that. If what I'm
Mm,
doing is harming those that I love,
yes.
big X on that. But
Yeah,
if what I'm doing is working for me and mine, but hurting you, well, I
yeah,
personally think that's still a big X. But I know that
yeah.
there are those out there that are like, that's okay, they'll figure themselves out. Yeah, well, that's not a great way to be, right? So yeah, you definitely have to take a bigger mindset of just beyond you and yours and say, all right, if what I'm doing is working for me and mine, and it's working for you,
Yeah.
then we're all together. We're all in the same tent. But the minute that I start stepping on your toes or breaking your back or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, then I got to step back and say, okay, how do I adjust, right? And
Yeah.
if we all did that, I mean, every single little person, if they did that one
Yeah.
thing, then we could right the ship immediately.
Totally. But it sounds so good in theory.
I know, but
So how
like
do
you,
we do this?
I think we have to keep the pressure on those in power, whatever power
Hmm.
means, right? So if there are those in your city, right, that
Yeah.
are allowing things to happen that are destructive, and destructive
Mm-hmm.
can take on whatever sense, right, to the people, to
Of
freedoms,
course.
to whatever it might be, then you need to either voice your opinion, right? This is what we are coming
Mm.
back to. It's, don't take it as the norm. Oh well, I guess we have to wear our mask, right?
Yeah, right.
And when all this thing started, the area that I lived in, the county I lived in, they called themselves a sanctuary county, so they didn't
Right.
force the mask mandates on for the longest
Hmm.
time. And
Interesting.
it was that whole, no, we're not going to kowtow, we're not going to live in fear. And again, it comes around to, well, do we know all the information, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously you want to be informed, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to get that, and this is a big one for me. You can't get your information from one source,
Correct.
because
Yes.
someone could control that one source, and then control your
Mm.
knowledge and your thoughts as a result of that, right?
Mm.
But anyway, to come back to that, if there's someone in power that is doing, harm, whatever
Mm.
you deem that to be, then you need to address that with them through whatever chain of command there is available, or I don't want to say protest, because protest isn't the right word, but there are definitely assembling of minds that you could get together, like we're doing
Yes.
here, having conversations at a bigger level and saying, look, we all think the same thing,
Yeah.
but they're representing us. That's not what we think. And then you could go to them as a unified, organization or
Yeah.
unified group of folks and
Exactly.
say, hey, you're not representing us. You were
Yeah.
you were voted in. We voted you in. Hello.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think it's the only way that things are going to change if we actually, and I speak about this a lot about collaboration. And I think that we have to become a collective who are going to help change and bring and shift from problem to solution across the global landscape. I really
hmm
believe that it is gone the days that it's just going to be one person that does this. One person is really powerful, but it's not enough right now because there are so many voices, even divide, like division within
yeah.
tribe of people where once they were really unified. This is
hmm
not the case anymore. It truly is not. And so we have to become more of a unified collective.
hmm
And that means that we don't all look the same, sound the same, but we have to come together and go have these conversations and go, how can we maybe disagree on everything else, but agree on something that, and this is where I go back to humanity as stakeholders,
hmm
that is going to add value to humanity going forward.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that we have in common, I don't care what color, what race, what gender, whatever else it is, we are part of the human race.
Yeah. Amen.
And
Yes.
that brings us back to an even playing field. It really seriously does. And when we think of humanity as stakeholders, that's
hmm
us coming first as humans and going,
hmm
how are we going to add value to humanity? Now we bring our distinctions to the table. We need those distinctions. That's all the differences. You don't look like me. You don't sound like me. You
Right.
have years of wisdom that I don't have, that particular wisdom. I've got other pieces of wisdom, whatever.
Right.
We
Right.
bring that to the table. That's our distinctions, right?
Yes.
Now we can come as a collective, even if we look really different, sound really different, and you know, but we can find and these conversations, I've really proven that without even meaning to prove it, but it's kind of come out of it, the fact that there is always something we can agree on and collectively go, I see how this could be really important for us to keep moving forward and shifting it from problem to solution. It is amazing, seriously been amazing. And one of the reasons I don't get to know you, have a pre-call, ask questions, all that sort of thing, I don't want to have biases come into play. I want to
Yeah.
meet you. I want to get to know you
Yeah. Absolutely.
as what you bring to the table without me going, oh, I think he'd be great for this or do this or that,
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? Which is
Yeah.
what we tend to do as humans.
Absolutely. I think one of the great points you made inside there was,
Mm,
we don't need to look the same or think the same or act the
mhm.
same or have the same experiences. I actually think there's power, huge power in our differences, right?
You and me both.
Because if I'm sitting there and saying, okay, I'm a 55-year-old white male. All right.
Yeah,
Well, if all I'm associating with is 50 some year old white males, then I'm going to
yeah,
have this narrow view of the world, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
good, bad, or indifferent, it's going to be this, right?
Correct.
And so now let's take it one step further. Let's say now I'm going to be dealing with just well off 55-year
Yeah,
old white males. Right now it
yeah,
gets even more narrow.
yeah,
Whereas if I open it up to say, okay, well, let's bring the ladies in, right? Let's
yeah,
bring these people over there in. Oh,
yeah,
these people don't, they're from a completely different environment. Let's bring them all in. Now, I'll share my thoughts, you share your
yeah.
thoughts. Here's a great thing. My former sister-in-law,
Mm,
we could not be more different when it comes to political views. It's just
hmm.
we were like night and day.
Yeah,
But we were able to sit down. This is probably one of the few people sit down and have conversations just like we're doing now. Oh, you
yeah,
think this way? Well, here's why I think the way I do. And then we would just talk back and forth
yeah.
and be like, "Well, I never thought about it like that." It doesn't change my opinion, but
No.
it gave me a new piece of information to digest and go, okay, well, now I understand your point of view. Doesn't mean I have to
Mhm.
agree with it, right? Whatever it is, we can still dialogue and
Yeah.
disagree and then come back the next day and not have to go, oh, yeah, you're not a good person, right? It doesn't have to be like that. We can go about our days and live, like you said, in the human race
Yeah.
But we have to, I think one of the first things we got to do for humanity's sake is
Mm.
stop with the divisiveness,
I
right?
so 1,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000 agree with you on this
My
one.
wife said it more, couldn't have said it more perfect. She goes, we're all in the human race, right?
Yeah.
You're not a different species because you're white or because you're Asian or
No.
because you're Hispanic. Oh, you're
Correct.
from the Mexican race or you're from the Spanish. No,
Yeah.
you're from the human race. End of story,
Correct.
right? I have white skin. You have darker skin. They
Yeah.
have a yellower. They have long hair. I'm losing mine. Who cares,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the
I
world cares, and this is the problem.
and
And this
and
is where the division comes.
and
And here's
but
the thing,
go
like
ahead.
I have to bring this up because one of the things you said was, and I so agree with this, by the way, and I am getting better and better at this on purpose. That I am. So one of the reasons I read 5 books at once is so that I'm not just getting one lens, that
Hmm.
I'm actually getting all these different lenses from different, like one of my books is a Kingpin, American Kingpin, which was all the underground,
Yeah.
having the rights to, as a human, to sell and purchase guns and drugs and everything else. Like, honestly, a lot of that is against my value system, but that's okay. But I wanted to know it. I
Yeah.
wanted to see what it meant and why they would even think that this,
Hmm.
because I was only going from a lens that I had been brought up in and that what I had gathered from my knowledge, right?
Hmm.
So I'm trying to use different lenses. What I find interesting is, and I think that social media really feeds this monster in a lot of ways, is that many will get one pocket of information and then they build their thinking around that,
Hmm.
or and then they blurt it out to the world, and that becomes, and then others go, oh, I like that, I'm coming on board with that, I say
Hmm.
the same thing. We are not, this is not helpful for humans to
Right.
be just like, ruining people's lives because all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of people that say this is a bad thing that you're saying or doing. We are
Right.
saying that it is our truth, so it must be your truth, and because of that you're not telling the truth. Now, I think there is just so much harm when we do it that way.
Hmm.
We have got to learn as humans to listen to one another, whether we
Hmm.
agree with one another or not.
Yeah.
We have to listen.
Yeah.
And just
Absolutely.
like you were saying before with the ex-sister-in-law, like, this is when we listen. Okay, so I might not change what I've just heard, or I might, or I may
Yeah.
even deepen what I believe now because I
Yep.
know even more so what I'm saying is truth for me.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I think that we have lost that ability to have those conversations where it's okay to disagree. So if you agree with me, we will join together, we'll have that conversation, and together we are the tribe that does this. We have got to stop that, because that is not going to be beneficial for humanity going forward. It's
Right.
only going to widen what we spoke about just before of the division, the
Hmm.
dividing,
Yeah.
and divide us. Because
Absolutely.
unless you fit with me, believe with me the same things, then we can't be friends.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and I think that having that ability to think beyond what we know is going to be key, right? And I think when it
Yeah.
comes to let's step back and say leadership, if you're going to
Mm,
lead, right, and it could be your family, right?
correct.
You don't have to lead a company. You could just be
Correct.
leading your friends. The first person you'll ever lead is the person you're looking at in the mirror, right?
Mm,
And if you can't lead that person, right, which is being open and honest and dealing
yeah.
with adversity and dealing with challenges and facing whatever, right, then you're not going to be able to lead anyone else. So to do that, you're going to have to break down okay, well, here's what I think. Is that valid? You got to check yourself every once in a while, right? If I step back
Mm,
and hopefully you'll understand this and you'll agree. When we were, let's say, 15, right?
yeah.
a little crazy. I know I did some things that right now, if I ever did it, I'd kill myself.
Yeah.
But a lot of my values and knowledge based things that I did that directed my actions, I know are
Mm.
completely different now. It doesn't mean they were wrong when I thought them when I was 15. It's just that I only knew 15 years worth of stuff. I only
Yeah.
knew I was looking at the world through this lens right here of a
Yeah.
15-year-old boy in
That is
Southern
such a
California,
good point.
right? And now,
Yeah.
okay, now as I go through life, I go further and I go further and I
Yeah.
open myself up to new things. I do like you. I read other books that are not the norm, right? Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go check this out, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a woo woo person, but
Nor
there's a
me.
lot of right. There's a lot of
But
people doing this woo
I
woo thing.
do a
So
whole lot of other things as well.
yeah,
But it's
so you
because I don't want to shut off from it, because
that's it.
obviously it's real to other people, and this is what they build everything around. So I need to
Hmm.
understand, why do they think that this is such a real thing? Because I think then I can understand their thinking when they come to the table. I mean, I've had some pretty woo-woo people on this decision table that, but I can have a conversation with them because I'm open to going,
Yeah,
well, what is it that you're seeing? How do
yeah,
you see it in this way? And then we connect on some things, and I go, wow, here's another amazing human
yeah.
wanting to bring good to the world, and this is how they do it. So, it's funny because I love what you say around that 15-year-old. I think that what we do is we then go, we saw that 15-year-old, and now we see that 15-year-old thinking, and we put people in those boxes, and we continue to think they look like that, sound like that, and do things
Right,
that way. Yet
right.
we are not letting that maybe they have evolved to
Yeah,
the table. And I
absolutely.
think that that's where our biases play a part in it. I don't know. If you rocked up in a boardroom looking like you do now, what would they think?
Right? Who the hell is that redneck?
Right. Because
Yeah,
that is how we are taught,
yeah.
that if you look like that, you rock up like that, and then will we listen? Will we give you credibility because you haven't got
Hmm.
that suit on? And I'm really strong on this because I lost a major contract because I wouldn't dress up in the suits, in the penguin suit is what I call it, for the
Right.
corporate, and I
Absolutely.
had to get this particular contract. And I said that is then I'm teaching them to be looking like everyone else, sounding like everyone
Hmm.
else, and building culture within the company that
Yeah.
is just like everyone else is doing across the globe. And then I'm saying that's totally against what I believe
Yeah.
and what I'm about. But I have to say that hasn't always been an easy thing to do it differently
Mm-mm.
and to stand out in that way. I'd love to know, what does that course mean to you?
Yeah, yeah, I think, and I went through that. Growing up. Obviously, I did some time in the military, and everyone is the
Yeah,
same in the military. They put
of
you in a
course.
box. But one of the things I read when I was probably around that 15-year-old guy was the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, which was a book that Bruce Lee wrote before his
Mm,
passing, obviously before his passing. But
mm,
and it wasn't so much the martial arts piece of it that the learning to fight. It was some
yeah.
of the philosophies in there, and one of the things that stuck out with me was um, learn what's useful and discard the rest, right?
Oh, I love
And
that.
but to do this, you have to put yourself out there to learn. And so as I went
Mm,
through my life and I went through corporate America, right, I learned everything I could. And, sometimes you have to learn to conform. I'm not
oh
saying
yeah,
I
done
agree
that,
with it.
been
It's
there.
great, right?
I've
So
been there.
you
I've
like
been there.
I worked for Coca-Cola for, 12 years. To do
Mm,
that, I had to go in with the short hair, the clean
right.
face,
A little different then. Yeah.
and put on the penguin suit like you said.
Mm,
But here's the
mm.
thing: once I got in there and I showed them what Tracy was all about, my game is hard.
Yeah.
I started letting the hair grow, right?
Hmm.
Start letting the mustache grow. And they're like, okay, we know who Tracy is. Tracy rocks it. He's all good. But to your point, there's those people that put you in that box because
Yeah.
of how you look. But you have to start to teach them, all right? Absorb what's useful, discard the rest. And if you think that judging me by my appearance is useful, then you and
Mm.
I probably should not be doing business,
Oh, I
right?
so agree. What how did you get to that point, and how do we get others to that point? Because I think that this is something that you and I so agree on, and we've had to deal with it in our own world.
Hmm.
And I used to think being different was such a negative thing, and then I realized it's my genius zone. That actually the way that I think really differently, the way that I'm happy to turn up and be different, and there's strength in being different, meaning that I'm okay to question things
Hmm.
because I want to keep learning and evolving. And if you don't, that's okay. You're probably not my peep, but if you are, then I am so excited to have a conversation
Yeah,
with you.
absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, I.
But this is not a norm. This is not a norm.
Mm-mm. No,
So
it's
how do we get to why, instead of widening that gap, my question is, how do we narrow that gap from where we know that is so beneficial to where we are as a society right now?
we have to get. For me, I think it's about getting people to stop looking. Here, hold on a second. To stop looking like this, right?
Yeah.
And start looking in that mirror. And
Yeah.
okay, and here's for me, you know what? If you look inside yourself, and I actually, I've gone through like three big turning points in my life. It was
Mm.
overcoming drugs, the death of an 18-month-old daughter, and a really
Oh, I'm
horrendous
so sorry.
divorce. All right. In
Wow.
each one of those times, I paused and I
Yeah.
turned around and I called it looking back into the abyss, right? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and if you can, if you have the wherewithal to turn and face your demons just right in
Yeah.
the eye and say, okay, I beat your butt, and here's what
Yes.
I learned from it.
Mm.
Everything you go through life and experience, there's a lesson to be learned. You might not want to learn the lesson,
Oh, that's so true. That's
right?
so true.
But the minute you learn the lesson, you're able to, stand a little bit taller, put your
Yeah.
shoulders back a little bit more, and
Yeah.
realize that if you had been yourself at the beginning of that adventure, you probably wouldn't
Mm.
have gone through it.
Hmm.
I know if
Oh,
I'd,
that's an interesting insight.
yeah,
If you'd
because
been yourself,
at the
you may
beginning
never,
of your,
at the
yeah,
beginning of it, you
at
may
the
never
begin,
have gone through it. Where did you come to that
I
conclusion?
actually it just came up. I, oh, I think,
Oh,
and what I mean by that is, if every one of my misadventures, my dark
yeah,
times, I call them,
yeah.
if I'd have just stood up and been who I knew I was inside,
Mm,
that I wouldn't have started doing drugs. It's not me, right? I didn't do drugs. I got
right.
into a
Wow.
situation. It was like, oh yeah, let me be a part of the group, and that just
Yeah.
started to, just spiraled out of control.
Was that because of acceptance and you didn't have any alternative, or
It's
like,
because I wanted to be a part of that crowd over there,
yeah,
rather
yeah,
than, you know what, I am not that person. I don't need the drugs to look awesome and to
yeah,
get the girls or whatever it was, right? I don't
yeah.
need that. But I felt like I did at the time, so I made that choice. And here's the thing, I
Mm,
made the choice.
yeah,
We
yeah.
all have to, and I think this is going to be the next step for people to be doing this as opposed to staring at the phone, right? They're not
Mm.
accepting the consequences for their own
Own
choices.
actions. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Please don't
exactly.
tell me that it was because of something else. And it may
Hmm.
have been, right? My big hairy ass divorce, right? I could say, "Oh, she was this and she was that, and it
Yeah,
was all her fault." You know what? It takes two.
it
There's
does.
two. There's two in a
Hmm.
marriage, right?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
two
I
people can
noticed.
carry a couch really easy. It's
Yes.
really hard when only one person's doing it, right? Anyway,
Yeah, that's
but
so true.
but if you can take the time and look back at your demons, at your monsters, whatever you
Mm.
want to call them,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
find the lesson, then you'll be able to just stand up that little bit taller and say, you know what, I'm just going to be me. And if you can do
yeah.
that at 15 or 16, dude, that would be fire.
So good. I think what's so good about that is what I think there's fundamentals to leadership, and I always say this, but I really truly do. And one of them is awareness. So
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways, what it's done is you've learned from those three things, and you've created an awareness around what that taught you
Yeah.
and what not to do in the future going forward. And I think that, all the questions, all the thinking, all the layers and the variables that we've talked about creates an awareness
Mm-hmm.
to, once we bring it out as questions, by the way, we create an awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the next piece of that is, you said it beautifully. It's like, I need to take responsibility for the
Yeah.
decisions I made,
Mm-hmm.
not that others didn't make stupid ones around you, or that you were in environments that maybe helped create really easy ways for you to make decisions. But
Sure.
you've got to take responsibility for your decisions.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to the next fundamental that I believe in leadership, that we have to own it. We have to go, what is our ownership?
Yeah.
Now that we know what we do know, like I always say, you don't know what you don't know, but when you do know it, there's a responsibility.
Yeah.
What are you going to own with that, for that, now that you know what you know? And I think that that's where the next piece comes in, is that this change, for a change to happen, we have to disrupt what wasn't working
Mm-hmm.
to now a pattern that will give us a result that has to be sustainable, by the way. In
Absolutely.
other words, that it is adding value to humanity, not just this generation, but the generations and the generations and the generations to come. I had the privilege of spending some time with my grandchildren yesterday, cuddling them. And I was holding the youngest one, and just thinking, it motivated me. It drove me to going, this is why I get up every single day to do what I'm doing right now in my life.
Right.
Because if I'm leaving behind footprints that are not beneficial for this beautiful bundle, that is an innocent, beautiful bundle that has come
Mm-hmm.
into this world, then what are we doing? And it
Yeah.
goes back to that original conversation we had at the beginning of this, where we are actually destroying a lot of the environment that is meant to be supporting and helping and bringing
Yeah.
what we need as for humans. So that's that full circle again.
Yeah, and I think there's another thing inside that, holding
Yeah.
your grandbaby is, even if you did everything right throughout your
Yeah.
entire life, which,
Yeah.
God, no, we're human. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But
I
if
don't
you
know about you,
did,
but I haven't.
I feel you on that one. But even if
Yeah.
you did everything right at the moment you were doing, you felt, you know what, that was the right thing. You
Mm.
might not find out about it ever.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. And
Yeah.
here's the reason I say this, because my oldest daughter, who just turned, oh my gosh, 31,
Mm.
30, yeah, 31. And she just started going back to college, right, last year.
Mm.
And she went through a horrible time with my ex-wife. It was part of the divorce, and they were button heads and the whole nine
Mm.
yards. And at 16, my former mother-in-law said, hey, why don't you have her come out and live with us, let her finish school out here, get those two apart from each other so they stop
Mhm.
going at each other's throats. And I was like, okay, well, for me, this is gonna be her choice.
Yeah.
Would I make that same choice now? Probably not. That's a lot to put on a
Interesting.
16-year-old girl. But
Mm.
she decided she was going to go live with grandma out in
Mm.
California from Atlanta. And as a goodbye gift, I gave her this beautiful leather-bound journal with a wolf on it, and I wrote
Mm.
some fatherly wisdom for her send-off. And
Wow.
unfortunately, this was after 9/11, so we couldn't take her all the way to the gate.
Yeah.
And I never heard about this journal ever again. Okay, so
Hmm.
this was 15 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And in her English class, she got challenged to write this paper about one of the most pivotal points in her life.
Mm.
And she wrote about this poem that she wrote, and it was the first poem that she wrote in that
In that
journal
journal.
on that
Wow.
plane as it was taking
Mm.
off. And it was this beautiful poem that she wrote about, a father sends her daughter away. And she shared it with me. I never knew it existed. I didn't even know I had any impact by doing that. And so I just come back to say that you could do everything right and
Yeah.
never know that you're doing it right. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with yourself to know
Yeah.
I did the best I could with what I had at the time, and I'm still okay with that,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's such a good point. And I think that that interesting piece about that is that you can know that you did your best.
Right.
And I think that's the awesome thing. When we know that we've done our best, the ongoing effect of that,
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
But all I know is I've done my best. And I think, you know, my thing that I say to myself every day of my finishing my work day, I go, is there anything else humanly possible that I could have done today?
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I can say, so I might have to say, oh no. And I send a message off to you, Tracy, or an email off to Michelle, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there anything else humanly possible I could have done today? And I go, no, I've done everything humanly possible. And I
Right.
think it's that whole piece of going, there's nothing else I could have done better today. I've
Right.
been the best that I could have been. And whatever that means, it is the best that I could have been. And I think there's a real satisfaction knowing that you can go to sleep each night, knowing that you've been the best you. And I
Absolutely.
think that that's so powerful, that piece. And we often forget that as part of the variables and the layers, right?
And that, and almost absolutely, and that brings us almost full circle back
Yeah.
around to the person that you have to lead first is
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you in doing what you were just talking about there, am I
Mm,
being the best person? Did I make the best choices, knowing now what
mm,
I know, at that moment? If your
yeah.
answer is yes, then right on. But I think
Yeah.
one of the things you got to do is on an ongoing basis review that, right?
Yes. I
And
agree.
does that mean that you sit there every day and you overanalyze every decision you make? No, no, no. Right? You just, I don't know, maybe you jot down in a journal. Okay, here's the things I struggled with today, and here's the reason why I made that. And then, a year from now, 30 days from
Mm,
now, heck, maybe tomorrow, you look at that and say, that was a dumb decision. Let me go fix that.
mm,
But if you never review it, if you never think about it, then you get on this path, this auto path, right? You're just,
yeah.
you're like a Tesla. You're just driving down the road and following the white lines and making sure you don't hit the cars. But
Yeah.
you're not really living life at that point, right? And then let's
Mm,
take this one step further. If you're going to take a moment to ponder about the things, hey, maybe you're sitting there on a Saturday morning, having your morning coffee, and just kind of thinking
mhm.
about the week. Maybe you're even journaling. I don't know, right? And you're going, okay, I did pretty good this week. Then take a minute to say and ask yourself a tough question. Make it a different tough question. Maybe this week the
Mm,
question is, am I living the life of my dreams? And if the answer is no, then find
yeah.
out why. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, because if
Yeah.
you're not living the life of your dreams, then you're probably not being you to do that.
Mm. That's so good. Okay, so if anyone wants to know more about you and connect with you more, how do they do that?
They can come on over to the website, which is darkhorseschooling.com. And then
Mm.
all the socials are up there. I'm on all the socials, Facebook, Pinterest, just come on over, hang out with me. I chat with anybody. I'm a pretty open book.
I love it. I love that. Okay, so it's come to this part of the show where I do only this is the only time I ask the same question,
Okay.
honestly, on every show. And it goes back to that whole awareness. Like I love our conversation, by the way. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being who you are, Tracy. Like, I
Thank you.
really appreciate that. I appreciate your honesty. I think you have this just like it's this warmth in the way that you question and you have insights. I love that. I love, honestly, to be honest, I really love um all through my life I've had older mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Right from a young girl, I was really drawn to the wisdom of things that you've experienced
Mm.
that I haven't yet.
Right.
And so for me, I've loved the wisdom that you bring from your years of experiences and the learnings that you've taken from those experiences. So for
Thank you.
me today, that is the thing that I'm taking from it. I ask everyone this question. What are
Sure.
you taking from our conversation today?
I'm taking the reminder that we have to consciously continue to work to break down the walls, right?
Hmm.
And to continue to have folks like yourself out there saying, look, the great way to break down the walls is just to have a conversation.
Hmm.
It seems like such an easy solution towards things, but so many folks,
Right?
again, they're doing that Tesla thing. I like Teslas. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, they're
They're
pretty all
all
right, those cars.
they're on autopilot. They're just living their lives, doing their thing, and they're not questioning anything. So question things and engage with people and hey, take a minute and engage with someone that doesn't look like you, doesn't
Yeah.
act like you. If you don't know why they do what they do, just say, hey, check it out. Carrie, can you let me know why'd you do that? I
Yeah.
bet you they'll tell you.
Yeah. I think, it's funny because I think that we don't like to question things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because what if they answer different to what we know? Or what if they answer in a way that we disagree with? What if they answer and make me feel uncomfortable with their answer? Like, there's so many reasons and so many things that make it awkward to have a conversation with someone who doesn't look like us.
And I think that the real challenge there is they probably will. They probably will say things
Yeah.
that you're like,
And
you
that's
don't
what I always
know,
say.
you don't
Yeah.
understand. But here it again, I'm going to take it right all the way back to the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, the quote that I
Hmm.
took back when I
Yeah, I
was
love
a
that.
teenager: absorb what's useful, discard the rest.
Mm,
Inside that question, the answer they'll give to that question, there'll be some nugget that will help you. It may not help you right that second. It may help you
mm,
the next day or the next month. You go, oh man, I remember John or Joe or
mm,
Bohemian, whatever his name is, said this. Man, if I hadn't had that conversation, I wouldn't have been ready for this moment right now.
mm. Okay, so you've quoted someone else and their wisdom. What's your wisdom that you've gathered from your years that you just go, that's what it's about?
Ah, you know what? The easiest way to say it is
Mm,
just be you.
mm,
Just be you. Right? If like I said earlier, every
mm.
time that I started stumbling or bumbling or tripping or falling or had a full-on face plant is because I
Yeah.
wasn't being me. I wasn't being true to me. I wasn't
Mm,
being me as a person. The minute you continue to do that, and I'm not saying, be rude to other people, right? You can be you
no.
and not be rude, but you're being true to yourself. That's
Mm,
when your life, your heart opens up. And that's for me, that's going to be the huge thing for the humanity. Let's take this all the way back to humanity
yeah.
as stakeholders. When you're able to open your heart up, and you can do that because you're being true to who you are, you have more to give. And
Mm,
people will start being drawn to you, right? Not
mm,
everybody, and you don't need everybody, right? You just need the
yeah.
people that resonate with who you are to come on in.
Mm,
You put your arms around them and you say, okay, here's what we all think. Here's what we all agree on. Let's go out and do
yeah.
great things. There it
Yeah.
is.
Love it. And I am going to end this broadcast because I could not say it any better than that. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you so much for having me.